3 spine-chilling true stories of sinister neighbors with unexplained secrets that will haunt you. Laura stood at the threshold of her charming new home, heart pounding. The bright white picket fence felt welcoming, yet the shadows in the backyard stretched longer as dusk settled. She had hoped that moving to this quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio, would bring safety and peace for her and little Emily after her tumultuous divorce. Instead, a chill crawled up her spine. Flickering lights were just the beginning. First, it was harmless enough. Each night, as the sun sunk behind the trees, the porch light would flicker 1, 2, 3 times before steadying. It's just old wiring, she reassured herself. But the whispers creeping through the thin walls? That felt different. They were soft but incessant, barely audible, but enough to make Laura clutch the edge of the kitchen counter with sweaty hands. She couldn't shake the feeling that something lurked just out of view, lurking behind the friendly facade of Mr. Reynolds, her retired police officer neighbor. He seemed harmless enough, offering smiley waves as he watered his flowers. "You have to check out the park," he said, voice low, but with an alarming glint in his eyes whenever she mentioned feeling uneasy at night. It sent a shiver racing through her. Amidst the warmth of the community, a cold feeling settled in the pit of her stomach. It was as if he held secrets he dared not share. Days turned into weeks, and the flickering lights became accompanied by the sound of nails scraping against wood late at night. Laura often found herself lying awake, clutching the blanket around her, every creak of the house echoing like thunder in her ears. Just last night, she'd been sure she'd heard the haunting voice of a child crying. Was that real? Or a nightmare sprouting from her unease in this new, weird world? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The day she stumbled upon that old photograph in the dark confines of the drawer sent a tidal wave of panic crashing over her. A younger Mr. Reynolds stood beaming beside a child who looked eerily similar to Emily. Who was that little girl? Questions spiraled into unanswered fears, twisting in her mind like storm clouds. Had she moved her daughter into a place riddled with dark history? Unsure, Laura resolved to confront Mr. Reynolds that very evening. But the moment she stepped out, she spotted him at the edge of his yard, speaking hurriedly with a stranger, their hushed tones laced with urgency. She couldn't make out the words, but the way his face paled made her blood run cold. "Keep it quiet," he urged, as if a sinister truth lurked right behind their cheerful smiles. Heart racing, she took a step back, adrenaline surging. The safe suburban dream was turning into an unimaginable nightmare. She had to know what lay beneath the surface, beneath the sweet smiles and friendly waves of the neighbors. She steeled herself, sweat trickling down her brow. It was time to unleash the truth, but as she opened her front door to confront Mr. Reynolds, a shadow shifted, and a chilling voice whispered from the darkness, making her breath hitch in terror. What awaited her in this perfectly manicured neighborhood? The sudden weight of silence pressed against Laura as the door creaked open. Shadows deepened, thickening in the twilight. Just outside her peripheral vision, movement stirred, and the whisper coiled around her like a snake, cold and sinister. "I told you to keep quiet," it teased, the words like ice on her skin. Heart pounding in her ears, she stepped outside, seeking the source of the voice. "Who's there?" Her voice trembled, each syllable feeling like a fragile thread straining under the weight of truth and fear. Laura, the sound dripped from the darkness, thick and rich like syrup pooling on the floor. It was familiar yet foreign, and something deep inside her screamed to run. But her feet remained glued to the ground, rooted by a force she couldn't understand. She called out again, "Is someone there?" Only the faint rustle of leaves responded, the night reclaiming its dominion over the unsettling quiet. The hairs on her neck stood on end, an instinctual warning. Behind her, The flickering porch light began to sputter ominously. For a split second, it cast dancing shadows that painted twisted shapes on the walls of her home. Just as unease settled like concrete in her stomach, she heard the clattering of the gate, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. "Everything okay over there?" It was Mr. Reynolds, eyes narrowed like shards of glass. His smile a mask of concern too polished to be real. There was something almost predatory in the way he observed her, assessing, calculating. "Did you hear that?" she stammered, the words tumbling from her lips in a rush. "I thought I heard someone. What you need to do, Laura," he interrupted smoothly, "is stay inside after dark. There are creatures out there." The last word slipped from his lips like a venomous whisper. His smile now a thin line, hard and emotionless. Laura's stomach dropped. "Creatures?" Panic clawed at her throat. "What do you mean?" "Just stories from around the neighborhood." He leaned closer, his voice lowering conspiratorially. "But you don't want to invite trouble, do you?" As his eyes locked onto hers, she felt a pit of dread unfurl within her. This man had secrets running deeper than his flower beds. What if he was part of it? Part of the darkness? They fell into a haunting silence filled with unspoken words and veiled threats. The sensation of being watched crept over Laura, a prickle beneath her skin. Turning slightly, she glanced towards the park Mr. Reynolds had once urged her to visit. It loomed in the fading light, an ominous silhouette against the twinkling night sky. Something shifted within those trees. A flicker, then motion. A figure darted away from the clearing, back into shadows. Her breath escaped in a rush, fear igniting as she felt the weight of all her fears manifesting into one terrifying thought. The child she'd heard crying wasn't just a figment of her imagination. "Where is Emily?" she blurted, her heart racing, anchoring her back to reality. Mr. Reynolds' face contorted slightly. A flicker of something almost human crossed his features before it vanished behind that eerie smile. "She is fine," he assured, his tone cool and unyielding. "But it would be best if you kept her away from the park. Nice communities have their dark corners just like all people." The words hung ominously between them, a warning. Laura turned back toward her house, panic spilling over into sheer desperation. "You're hiding something. I can feel it." "Feelings can be dangerous," he replied smoothly, stepping back with an unsettling calmness. As she stumbled inside, she slammed the door against the night, locking it tight. But Laura knew the creature Mr. Reynolds spoke of was not just outside. It was lurking in her home now, whether as a dormant whisper or the treacherous shadow of her neighbor. Moments later, she heard it again, a child's voice wailing softly, echoing from deep within the walls. It wasn't just fear that bubbled within her as she pressed against her daughter's bedroom door. It was a relentless terror gnawing at her sanity. What was it trying to tell her? With two trembling hands, she reached for the doorknob, but the whispers grew louder, a tempest of panic swirling around her. And that shadow at the edge of her sight? It was drawing closer. What dark truths were waiting for her to find? And would she be strong enough to face them? The clock ticked ominously as the night darkened around her. And in that pause, Laura felt her resolve flicker like the dying light outside. But what if the truth was worse than the fear? The wailing spiraled through Laura's mind, a haunting melody that echoed with every beat of her heart. She pressed her ear against Emily's door, the wood cool against her skin. "It's okay, Em," she whispered, but the words felt hollow in her throat. What could she say to comfort her daughter when she, herself, felt so far from safe? The whispers turned into an echoing chant, an unintelligible litany that clawed at her insides. Panic surged, and she yanked the door open, her breath catching in her throat as she spilled into the room. The shadows danced across the walls, twisting grotesquely, but Emily was asleep, blissfully ignorant of the storm brewing outside and within. Laura's chest tightened, her breath stifled by an invisible hand. The eerie quiet of the room was broken only by the wind, which howled like a caged beast outside the window. "Just a nightmare," she murmured, forcing herself to breathe, but the echoes persisted, pulsing through her skull. It felt as if an unseen presence filled the room, lurking just beyond the edges of her sight. She turned to the window, its glass like a barrier to another world, that place where shadows slipped and formed shapes just out of reach. "Is someone there?" she called, her voice trembling. She half expected Mr. Reynolds to appear, his calculating eyes watching, perhaps even grinning. But nothing answered, only a deepening silence that felt like a shroud. Driven by an instinct she didn't understand, she searched the room. Under the bed, in the closet, but nothing was out of place. Back in the hallway, the air felt thick, as if breathing had turned hazardous. Returning to Emily's door, Laura glanced down the corridor towards the stairs. The light flickered again, and she caught a glimpse of that shadow again, darting like an itch that couldn't be scratched. Her heart raced. This couldn't be just her imagination. Could it? Suddenly, the haunting cry pierced the air again, clearer now like a beacon in the dark. It pulled Laura toward it, beckoning her like a moth to flame. She stepped carefully down the stairs, the wood creaking underfoot, each sound exaggerated in the silence around her. Her mind raced with images of what lay waiting below. What would they do to me? The thought clawed at her, bitter and relentless. She reached the living room, each cautious step echoing her fear. Shadows loomed in every corner, hiding treachery behind their dark folds. She moved towards the front door instead of the muted cries. If she could just step outside, get a breath of fresh air, she might find some clarity or at least a sense of control. As she drew nearer to the door, the whispers intensified, rushing like wind through the trees. "Laura, help me." The words were unmistakable. They dripped with desperation. "Emily!" she screamed, her own voice slicing through the air. She twisted the knob, but it wouldn't budge. The heavy weight of her fear manifested as iron chains. No, she had to open it. Behind her, the shadows lengthened, twisting into impossible shapes. Suddenly, the window shattered, expelling glass like confetti, and a figure lunged through, cloaked in darkness. It was fast, too fast, and before she could react, it was upon her, its breath cold and sweet like decay. In one final instinctual movement, Laura twisted away, dodging to the side just as the creature lunged again. She sprinted down the hall toward her daughter's room, panic surging like a tidal wave. But as she reached for the doorknob, the soft sound of Emily's giggle floated through the air, innocent and pure, a stark contrast to the chaos enveloping her. Laura hesitated, confusion battling panic. What was happening? Why was Emily laughing? The world around her fractured, voices, shadows, fears swirling into a tempest of insanity. Was this a trick? What if she opened that door and found not her daughter, but something else entirely? The walls pressed in, and the shadows swirled in anticipation, waiting for her choice. What should she do now? Lock Emily away? Or open the door and face whoever or whatever had entered her home? The dark hand of terror swept across her mind, and she heard the voice again, clearer this time, sweet yet wicked. Come and play. Was it a game? Or was it a death sentence? Laura's heart pounded like a war drum, each beat a reminder of the choice before her. Emily's laughter filled the corridor, sweet yet ominous. How could her child find joy amidst terror? What kind of twisted play was this? "Open the door, Mommy." Emily's voice rang out, bright and carefree. It was impossible to ignore, slicing through Laura's dread like a knife. But the shadows behind her pressed closer, sending shivers along her spine. They seemed to whisper, beckoning her to stay. "Emily, what are you doing?" The question tumbled out, uneasily lodged in her throat. She turned, staring back down the dark hallway. The creature was nowhere to be seen, but the air crackled with its lingering presence, suffocating and cold. "Mommy, please, I want to play." This time, the giggle echoed, layered with such innocence it almost lulled Laura into submission. She could feel the weight of the shadows pulling at her, enticing her to step away from her daughter's call. "What do you want?" Laura shouted, desperate for answers that seemed to swirl in the air, just beyond her grasp. The laughter, suddenly twisted, morphed into a high-pitched cackle that sent chills scuttling down her arms. "Let me out." Emily's voice faltered, tinged with something darker now. Laura's stomach knotted. Fear twisted like a vine around her heart, constricting, squeezing. This wasn't the playful tone of her daughter. Felt wrong. The door protested as she pressed her ear against it. If you're in there, I'm coming in. Just hold on. A sudden gust rattled the window. The world outside felt far away, as if it had fallen into a parallel existence. She hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her child was inside. With one swift movement, she twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The room was swathed in darkness, a thick fog curling up from the floor like fingers curling to grasp her. "Emily?" she called, her voice cracking. The shadows shifted, and there it was, something dark, crouched low, whispering to her daughter. Emily sat against the bed, her eyes wide, staring at a figure, indistinct but undeniably present. Laura's heart dropped. "Get away from her!" she screamed, stepping forward. But with each stride, the shadowy figure morphed, expanding and contracting, almost as if it were part of the very walls. "Mommy, it's fun. Come join us," Emily chirped. There was a cruel twist in the creature's form. Bright blue eyes flashed in the dim light, sharp and hungry. It turned toward Laura, its movements fluid and inhuman. She stumbled back, nauseated, caught between a mother's instinct to protect her child and the horror of facing an unfathomable entity. The laughter burst out again, echoing in a shrill crescendo. It was all around her now, walls vibrating with the sinister melody. With sickening clarity, Laura understood her daughter was being lured into a darker game, one with fatal consequences. "Emily, no. Come here," she shouted, arm outstretched, ready to pull her back from the brink. But the shadows that danced greedily around Emily began to draw her in, tugging at the little girl's limbs with invisible threads. Laura turned her gaze to the figure, her body poised to leap forward, but something stopped her. Dark tendrils coiled around Emily, pulling her deeper into the gloom. "Playtime is just beginning," the voice hissed, muffled and terrible. Laura took a trembling breath, fight or flight warring inside her. What should she do? Dive into that nightmarish fray to save her child or flee to find help, risking Emily's eternal entrapment? The shadows leapt towards her, hungry. The choice crystallized a decision that would alter everything. Run or rescue, the humming chant echoed in her ears. She was running out of time. Laura's instincts screamed for her to flee. Every muscle in her body was taut, quivering with dread. Yet her mind screamed for her to save Emily. The laughter swirled, chipping away at her resolve. Sounded too tempting, too inviting. The shadows thickened around her, glowing with an unnatural pulse, as if the entity fed off her fear. "Emily!" she cried again, the sound scarcely more than a whisper. She advanced, each step a battle against the suffocating darkness that clawed at her skin. Every instinct told her to back away, but she couldn't. Not now. Not when her daughter was in peril. "Mommy, play with us." Emily's voice was now an eerie echo, intertwining with whispers that slipped into Laura's ears, icy and mocking. The creature's blue eyes glinted malevolently, an unnatural hunger lurking within them. Laura felt their weight pressing against her chest, a sickening reality settling over her. Standing at the threshold, torn between sinking into the shadows or plunging into that cursed room, Laura's decision hung over her like a noose. The echoes of Emily's laughter spiraled into a frantic chant, laced with malice. It was almost unbearable. The shadows lunged, tendrils reaching for Laura, but she swiped at them, swatting away the inky fingers as if they were nightmarish moths fluttering to her flame. "Get away from us," she snarled, summoning all her fury. With a primal scream, she dove into the room. The air thickened, wrapping around her like a serpent, squeezing, suffocating. She stumbled forward, desperation driving her to reach for her child. "Emily!" She could see the outline of her daughter now, trapped in an ethereal web spun of shadows, a sinister dance of light and dark. The creature shifted closer, its shape hardly human anymore, a writhing mass, cloaked in swirling blackness. Before she could react, the creature lunged forward, and her world crumbled. "Join us," it hissed, its voice slithering beneath her skin, igniting every nerve in her body with terror. "Get away from her!" she screamed, her voice breaking under the weight of despair. Every ounce of resolve galvanized her, and she surged forward, ready to tear Emily from its grasp. But as she reached for her daughter, the room twisted, spinning like a whirlpool of inky shadows. The shadows coiled tightly around Emily, squeezing her until Laura's heart seized. "Mommy!" she squeaked, her voice laced with fear. The creature's laughter transformed once more a cacophony of mocking tones, drowning her soul in dread. "No!" Laura howled, lunging to pull Emily free as the tendrils wrapped tighter, leaving no room for separation. But something unexpected occurred. The shadows began to fade slightly. A fragment of daylight crept through, illuminating Emily's frightened face. "Mommy! Help!" Panic echoed in her voice, crystallizing Laura's resolve. The creature recoiled as if stung, dark tendrils wavering. Only for a moment. Then those bright blue eyes glared, and a rush of angry shadows surged forward. Suddenly, a chill swept through the room. The shadows faltered, frozen in their tracks. The entity was gaining strength, enraged and ravenous, seeking to reclaim control. Laura felt the pull, the gravity of its malice dragging her backward. She couldn't let it consume them. Not now. "Hold on, Emily!" Laura shouted, and she grabbed her daughter's small hand, feeling the heat of her panic pulsate against her own. The creature lashed out, trying to separate them, violent writhing fracturing the air with terror. "Let her go!" Laura screamed, planting her feet firmly, pulling with all her strength. The shadows screamed in agony, hunger clashing against defiance. Could they escape? Could she really fight this terror anchoring them? Just as the darkness pulsed and rose around them, she felt the tightening grip of something cold and sinister wrap around her ankles. The abyss was calling back, wanting them both. "Run, Emily!" But as she screamed, the laughter continued, wrapping them in its suffocating embrace. Would they break free, or would they become another chilling tale woven into its never-ending cycle of fear? In that moment, time itself froze, and all became a void of screams and shadows, spiraling into an unsolvable mystery. The shadows writhed around them, a relentless tide of darkness that threatened to swallow both Laura and Emily whole. Somehow, however, that sliver of daylight fought back, illuminating the room with just enough brightness to momentarily push the shadows away. It was a maddening dance of light and dark, constantly in flux, a real-life nightmare that made every instinct within Laura scream to escape. The cold grip around her ankles tightened, pulling her down. "No!" she shouted, clawing at the floor with her fingers. But it was no use. The darkness was stronger. The creature loomed closer, its laughter relentless, saturating the air with malice. Join us forever," it taunted, twisting Emily's name into a grotesque melody. "Emily!" With a fierce cry, Laura yanked her daughter towards her. The shadows shrieked, desperately trying to unravel their connection. Laura could feel her strength waning. She was fighting the shadows, but it felt as if they were siphoning her very essence, draining every ounce of heat from her body. "Hold on, baby," she begged, her voice cracking. Emily's eyes were wide and glistening with unshed tears, filled with a fear that mirrored Laura's own. Each tug felt like attempting to pull a boulder from a chasm, heavy and unwilling to budge. Then, without warning, the shadows around them pulsed violently as if responding to a forgotten command. They weren't just trying to capture Emily, they were trying to consume Laura as well, to engulf them both in a weave of darkness that would erase them from existence. Lunging forward, Laura reached for her daughter's small hand again. The fleeting daylight flickered, illuminating Emily's terrified face for just a second. In that moment, Laura could see desperation etched deeply in her features. She felt an instinctual bond that drove her onward, flinging her raw determination into the fray. With a roar of anger, Laura pushed through the darkness, her muscles screaming in protest. "You won't take her," she shouted defiantly. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if struck by a physical blow. But suddenly, the laughter escalated, vibrating through the room like a warning. Tendrils shot towards her, long and sinuous, each one tipped with a needle-like point. It felt like a living web, trapping her, constricting her further. Emily's scream pierced the air, and the sound jolted Laura back to her purpose. "Let her go," she bellowed once more, her voice rising above the chaos. A taut second stretched into eternity, and for a heartbeat, the shadows paused. It was enough for Laura to break free from the suffocating grip momentarily. Without thinking, she twisted and pulled Emily to her chest, cradling her like a fragile bird. But even as she held her, the shadows surged again, ravenous for what they had lost. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emily cried, burrowing into Laura's safety. Panic clenched around Laura's heart, but she forced herself to be a barrier against the encroaching gloom. She glanced toward the door. It was just within reach they could make it. Wasting no time, Laura squeezed Emily's hand tighter. "Run!" As they dashed forward, the shadows writhed in fury, dark tendrils snapping at their heels. The mocking laughter transformed into angry shrieks, filling the space with sound. They sprinted for their freedom, but a chilling realization hit Laura. For every step they took forward, the entity pulsed with renewed energy. It would not let them go so easily. The door loomed closer, yet it seemed to stretch away, the air thickening in opposition. Their path felt like a labyrinth twisting and churning. Behind them, the creature surged, a cacophony of blackness racing to reclaim them. Just as Laura reached for the doorknob, a jarring force knocked her off balance. "Mommy!" Emily's voice echoed in panic as the tendrils coiled around them once more, dragging them back towards the void. Then the light flickered again, more intensely this time, illuminating an ancient symbol etched across the doorframe, a warning. A seal now threatening to break. What did it mean? With a roar, Laura pushed against the shadows, her voice rising over the chaos. "Stay with me, Emily. We will break free." As she turned the doorknob, a fierce light shot through, and time itself twisted. Would they escape? Or was this only the beginning of their nightmare? The moment Laura twisted the doorknob, the air around them thickened into a heavy fog, swirling, almost palpable. An electric pulse shot through the room. The darkness convulsed violently, shrieking, as if the door itself were a barrier pressed against a howling wind. "Mommy!" Emily's breath was rapid, a tiny gasp that tugged at Laura's insides. The shadowy limbs closed in, fierce and lithe. Just as Laura felt her grip falter, a blinding light exploded from the door as it swung wide open. They stumbled through the threshold into a tunnel of brightness, but the moment was fleeting. The light became a mere flicker against the oppressive veil threatening to drag them back. Laura felt the shadows clawing at her ankles, their whispers turning into anguished screams. Then they were in a corridor, sterile and white, lined with flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed ominously. Laura froze for a moment, scanning for an exit, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The shadows were relentless, daring to follow, blending into the walls like living ink. "Where are we, Mommy?" Emily's small voice trembled, the uncertainty curling around Laura's heart like a serpent. "I don't know," Laura replied, panic swelling in her chest. The whir of the lights added to her racing heartbeat. She realized they had traded one nightmare for another, trapped in this sterile labyrinth. The door behind them creaked ominously, a sign that the shadows weren't far behind. Determined to protect her daughter, Laura dashed forward, tugging Emily along. They moved past empty rooms, their windows barred, the doors locked tight. Each empty space felt like a coffin, and even the sterile smell of antiseptic couldn't chase away the stench of fear. Every step echoed, too loud in the silence. Laura could feel something lurking, something watching, waiting. She turned a corner, heart racing. Ahead, a flickering exit sign glowed menacingly, barely casting a halo of light through the shadows of dread. "Mommy, look!" Emily pointed, her voice shaking. Laura's heart soared for a split second. Hope surged, but the shadows behind them coiled tighter. "Hurry!" she urged, praying they would reach safety before the darkness engulfed them. As they ran, The corridor stretched endlessly, turning, twisting, defying all logic. The exit sign flickered, appearing closer one moment and farther away the next. Was the building itself alive, toying with them? Then a loud crash echoed. Glass shattered, reverberating through the halls. Laura spun around, just in time to see a dark figure slither through the air, morphing into something grotesque, its laughter echoing an impossible tune. They stumbled backward, falling against the cold wall. "Mommy!" Emily whimpered, pressing against her, eyes wide with terror. "Stay close," Laura hissed, grounding herself. She scanned the walls, looking for something, anything, a weapon, a mark, a glimmer of hope amid the chaos. That flicker of light, was it just a reflection of deception? Or was salvation within reach? In that moment, something caught her eye. A series of symbols painted on the wall, glowing eerily, pulsating under her gaze. Each shape felt impossibly familiar. Laura leaned in, her heart pounding. "Mommy, what is that?" Emily whispered. I think I remember," Laura stammered, tracing the symbols. Before she could piece it all together, a thunderous roar erupted behind them. Shadows swallowed the corridor. They were converging, ravenous. Laura felt the remnants of her strength shatter. With one last desperate push, she turned toward the glowing symbols. Could ancient magic be the key to her daughter's salvation? A chilling thought gripped her. What if the symbols were part of the monstrous trap? No, she couldn't let doubt win. With a scream, Laura threw her body against the wall, willing it to awaken. Would the symbols work? Or would they only deepen the darkness closing in? Light erupted, filling the corridor like molten sun. Laura felt the warmth against her skin, a fragile shield against the impending darkness. She pressed her palms onto the symbols, each stroke sending ripples of energy racing through her. Colors flickered and danced, weaving a tapestry of light that pulsed with life. "Mommy!" Emily's voice cracked through the brilliant haze, grounding Laura. The shadows roared louder, a sound like thunder mixed with the gurgling of a deep, primordial beast. They writhed in fury, swirling against the light's barrier, their blackness tinged with dark crimson, eyes glinting like shards of broken glass. Laura could feel the heat of their malice radiating against her back. "Don't stop," she shouted, urging the symbols to respond. Memory washed over her, a forgotten chant learned from her grandmother. Chills danced up her spine. What was once a bedtime story now echoed with urgency in her mind. "Luz de fuerza. Ven a mí," she murmured the words, willing the light to grow. The symbols flared, illuminating more of the corridor, the ethereal glow reaching out like tendrils, seeking the darkness. For a moment, the onslaught paused, the shadows recoiling, howling as if in pain. "Keep going, Mommy," Emily's voice pierced through. Laura tightened her grip on her daughter's hand, her heart a drum of determination. She felt her feet shifting, almost slipping. The pull of the shadows was relentless, a tide threatening to drown them. But she couldn't falter, she couldn't waver. As she recited the chant louder, the symbols responded with an intense brightness, the energy swirling into a protective barrier. But the shadows writhed back, mounting a fierce assault, whispering her deepest fears. Memories engulfed her, isolated moments of failure, echoes of lost friendships, and love abandoned. Was this a test? "Mommy, it's coming," Emily cried, her voice breaking. Laura turned, eyes wide, as a massive shadow lunged from the depths. It screeched a sound that felt like it could tear the very fabric of reality apart. She fired back with the chant, her voice fierce. "Luz de fuerza." The shadows hesitated again, their monstrous form flickering, shifting. Laura felt hope surge. The symbols glistened, intertwining with her chant, an unbreakable bond forming between her heart and the glowing brilliance. When the creature lunged again, she squeezed her eyes shut, channeling all her fear, all her love for Emily, into her words. Her heart raced in time with the chant. The barrier of light expanded around them, but the weight of despair pressed heavily against her. Then came the screams, a cacophony of the creature's rage and the whispers of the shadows, finally meeting the charged air. Light exploded in every direction, blinding and searing. The shadows shrank back, howling as if struck by an invisible force. A whirlwind of darkness forced into retreat. Suddenly, the ground shook. The walls trembled, cracks spiderwebbed across the sterile surfaces. Laura felt the light pulsating all around, lifting them, a tide moving upward. But then, Emily's cry broke through the chaos, sharp and piercing. "Mommy! My hand!" Laura gasped. She turned to see Emily's small fingers slipping away from her grasp, drawn back into the shadows. "No, Emily!" Heart racing, Laura lunged forward. But the space between them widened, dark energy stretching like a chasm. The symbols flickered, dimming. Laura's pulse pounded. "I'm coming. Hold on." The creature let out a triumphant roar, filling the corridor with a suffocating dread. In that moment of sheer terror, Laura felt a final twist in her stomach. What if the symbols were failing? What if all this was for nothing? Would she have to sacrifice every piece of her soul to save Emily? But in the darkest depths of despair, she spotted a flicker of light, one glowing faintly at the end of the corridor, not far from where Emily was pulled. "Emily, it's going to be all right. Trust me." Would she find the strength to reach her? Or would they both be lost to the shadows forever? The darkness writhed like a living creature, pulsating with malicious intent. Laura's heart thudded violently against her ribcage, a storm of fear and determination clashing within her. She could see Emily, a vulnerable silhouette in the grasp of shadowy tendrils, her small frame struggling against the pull. Just a little closer, Laura cried out, desperately stretching her hand, the distance between them a gaping abyss of despair. The symbols should have held, but they flickered like fading stars, the light dimming under the weight of her daughter's danger. The corridor echoed with chaotic whispers, clawing at her sanity, mocking her with every fragmented promise of safety they'd shared in the past. She could feel the encroaching dread, a chill wrapping around her throat like a noose. "Mommy, please." Emily's voice came through choked and broken, her eyes wide with terror as she felt the icy grip of the creature close around her. "No." The word exploded from Laura's lips, raw and urgent. She surged forward, voice rising in desperate prayer. "Luz de fuerza. Ven a mí." Each repetition of the chant sent tremors through the air, yet the shadows seemed to laugh, a cacophony of derision ringing in the hollow corridor. Another lunge, another heart-stopping scream. This time something shifted within Laura. Instinct ignited into something primal. The symbols blazed with newfound energy, illuminating her fraught features with fierce resolve. She could not fail. Not now, not ever. With renewed urgency, Laura pushed against the darkness, feeling the warmth of the light rippling through her palm. The tendrils recoiled, hissing like steam escaping a pot, but they were not done yet. They lashed out, striking at the symbols with ferocity, seeking to snuff out the light completely. The ground quaked beneath her, dust raining down like the remnants of a shattered world. Panic clawed at her throat, and yet, deep within her remained a flicker of hope. "Emily, I'm right here. Focus on my voice." "Mommy," Emily cried again, and in that moment, Laura's heart shattered. The creature wrenched at the last of Emily's fingers, tugging her backwards into the suffocating dark. She felt every heartbeat, every muffled sob resonating in her bones. Time blurred. With every warning tremor and flickering symbol, Laura knew she had to act fast. She invoked memories of laughter, sunshine, dances in the kitchen, and bedtime stories wrapped in love. "Luz de fuerza. Luz de fuerza. Come to me now." The air thickened, charged with desperate magic, and the glow began to pulse in sync with her heartbeat. In that instant, it felt like reality teetered on the edge, an unseen threshold that might swallow them whole. And then, "Mommy, the shadows, they're alive." Emily screamed, her voice now laced with horror, pulling Laura back to the brink of despair. "Hold on. I won't let go." Laura strained against the flood of fears threatening to drag her down. She took a step farther, channeling every ounce of strength into her remaining hold. A brilliant flash erupted from the symbols, illuminating the shadowy figure in front of her, revealing a twisted face of rage just inches away. It paused, blinking as the light hit its menacing form. In that moment of vulnerability, Laura seized the anchor of hope. Together, Emily. Fight it with me. But was her daughter even capable of hearing her? Was it already too late? Uncertainty danced on the edge of her heart, clawing at the seams of her resolve. Then, through the chaos, came a faint echo, soft at first, then growing stronger. "Mommy, I'm scared," just as the words drenched her in renewed dread. The shadows twisted tighter. Light flickered again, and for a dreadful moment, silence fell. What if the shadows were about to claim Emily forever? And what did that sinister whisper mean? Laura stood frozen, adrenaline coursing through her veins, the next choice looming large before her. Would she leap into the dark and risk everything? Would she sacrifice the last spark of hope to save her child? Fear gripped her tighter than the shadows did. With the flickering symbol flickering, Laura realized there was no time left. She had to make a choice now before darkness claimed them both. The air thickened with a new threat, a distorted laughter echoing from the depths, teasing her resolve. Could she trust in the light, or had she already lost everything? As Laura stood there, the world around her rippling with chaotic shadows, a fierce determination ignited within her. It pushed back against the suffocating darkness that churned hungrily to claim both her and Emily. "Emily!" she cried, reaching for her with every fiber of her being. "I'm right here." The moment hung thick and suffocating, the tendrils of night stretching, willing to pull Emily back into its abyss. But Laura felt an electric pulse of energy from the symbols still glowing faintly on the wall. "Luz de fuerza! Come to me!" she shouted again, her voice fierce with the raw conviction of a mother fighting for her child. Every word came from the depths of her heart, laced with memories of laughter, warmth, and happiness. In that desperate moment, she called out past the fear, weaving the love for her daughter into a powerful invocation. The shadows recoiled slightly as if stung by the radiant energy that brewed between them, the bond of mother and child. "Mommy, I'm so scared." Emily's voice trembled, echoing in the darkness. It pulled at Laura's resolve, each syllable mingling with her fears. She could see her daughter now trapped within a maze of shadowy tendrils. Eyes wide and pleading, with her heart pounding furiously, Laura pressed on. "Stay with me, Em. Focus on my voice. We're going to beat this." She felt the warmth of hope swelling in her chest, pushing the fear out like water bursting from a dam. Trying to pull strength from that sacred place, she summoned the last drops of light and love she had left in that moment of unified purpose. The symbols flared brightly, responding with a radiant pulse that ricocheted through the air. The shadows shrieked in rage, their twisted forms writhing against the brilliance. "Together, Emily," Laura rallied, pulling on her daughter's hand, striving to bridge the growing distance between them. "Mommy!" Emily cried, her gaze locked onto Laura's, fierce and unwavering now. "I can feel you." They were just two figures locked in an epic battle against an overwhelming tide of darkness. The shadows convulsed, grasping desperately to reclaim their prize. Yet, each chant infused the air with newfound energy, electrifying. The barrier holding them back flickered, almost faltering, reminding Laura of their perilous position. But she wouldn't let fear consume her. Somehow, amidst the chaos, she felt that fragile connection. It was as real and essential as the very air they breathed. She lunged forward, heart hammering in her chest. "Luz de fuerza!" The words burst forth, resonating with a powerful declaration of love and will. Light erupted from the symbols, cascading through the corridor like wildfire, bathing everything in radiant warmth. With that light came clarity, washing away the shadows clawing at them, pushing them back into the darkness from whence they came. "Hold on, Emily!" Laura shouted, almost praying, weaving the chant with each movement as if it were a taut thread binding them together against the night. The creature howled as the light filled the space, its form warping grotesquely. "This isn't over." It screeched, the dismay crackling through the air. But Laura didn't waver. "We will never play your game." She cried defiantly, breaking through the final barrier. The radiance surged, powerful as it enveloped them, washing away every doubt, banishing the shadows that in an avalanche of light. The shadows screamed in fury. "No! You can't escape!" But their words fell to a whisper, swallowed up like a dream dissolving upon waking. Laura felt the warmth of victory wrap around her just as she yanked Emily into her embrace. Their fingers intertwined. With one final push, they surged forward, breaking through the veil of darkness, bursting into a reality painted with luminescent colors. The shadows dissolved in a furious storm of blackness, their whispers fading into nothingness. Together, they emerged into blinding daylight, each breath sweet with liberation. Trembling, they stumbled onto a lush grassy field, sunlight pouring down as if welcoming their return. The sky stretched wide, vibrant blue and, filled with warmth, everything tangible, real, and full of life. "Mommy?" Emily glanced up, eyes wide and shining. "Did we really do it?" "Yes, baby." Laura laughed, tears of relief spilling over her cheeks, pulling Emily close. "We did." She held her daughter tightly against her heart, paying homage to the shadows that had tried to steal their bond. Fear may have clawed at the edges, but love had burst forth like a supernova, illuminating everything in its path as dusk began to settle gently across the horizon, painting the world in hues of orange and gold. Laura felt the remnants of despair fade away. The past would linger a scar, but they had survived. They had conquered darkness together. And, looking into Emily's bright, innocent eyes, she knew that with love, they could face anything that came next. This is the moment, dear friends. You need to subscribe immediately to catch the next exclusive stories that await you. Smash that like button now to help fuel the algorithm and ensure you never miss a thrilling tale. And remember to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need this thrilling conclusion in their lives. True fans know the importance of supporting our channel, and it starts with you. Let us build this community together.